United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. So glad to be with you here for those of you who are listening to us on WSGW 100.5 FM and 790 AM. We certainly thank you for tuning in. And then also those who are out there at WJOL in Joliet, Illinois. Those phantom followers that we don't know who's listening or what they're saying about us. We certainly welcome you to our program as well. Well, today we're in the studio and I have my main man, John B, in the place to be. What's good, John?
Hello, hello.
All right. Hello, hello. Well, you know what? I had an opportunity to speak to our dear friend, Mark Bassett.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did. And we've been missing texting back and forth, but he is going to be back in the area next month. He comes back in the month of November. So we're excited about him coming back. He has had the opportunity to live his fantasies out as a young beach boy in California, surfing the waves and doing, I think he said he was doing boogie board. Is that correct?
Body surfing.
Body surfing.
Yep.
So body surfing and all of that good stuff. So I'm glad that he'll be back here in this wonderful Midwestern weather that we're having. Why are you looking at me like that?
Why is he coming back in November, though?
Because he is Mr. Christmas.
You're right.
Remember,
you're right.
So
Yep.
remember
Mark needs to come back for the snow.
He has to come back for the snow. He is Mr. Christmas, and he'll be back just in time to decorate his house. Was it 3 levels of the house where
it's something crazy?
You were there. You took pictures. Remember?
I didn't count the levels. At least I don't remember. I think it's 3.
I think it's 3 levels of the home were all decorated top to bottom in Christmas attire. And I'm sure he's going to pull out his things because he was at Christmas Aglow this year. Again, I think this year in Washington, D.C. Last year, the year before was Chicago. I think this past year was Washington, D.C. So we're excited to see what he shall pull out of his little red Christmas sack. But yeah, so that's what he's going to be about. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of an uncomfortable conversation, or the power of uncomfortable conversations. And we're going to be doing something a little bit new today. And I'm so glad to have Jonathan in the studio. He's looking at me with those wonderful eyes of surprise. He's just like, what are we getting ready to do here? But anyways, so that's what's going on. What's hot off the press? Have you seen that your boy Travis Kelce, which you absolutely probably like, who is he? You know him because he's the one that's
he's dating Taylor Swift,
see,
right?
He's not even a football player, a football fan, and
huge Swiftie here.
Are you a huge Swiftie?
No.
Players gonna play. Shake it up. Anyways, I knew Jonathan. That's what it is. I finally tapped into your power source. But anyways, he's getting ready to air in a new movie, and they were showing. They gave a sneak peek of his new character, and I thought it was so funny. He has a mullet, and it is it's funny. It's a funny thing. I saw it this morning on one of the news outlets, and I just laughed. The other thing that I saw this morning, oh my goodness, I saw number 45, Donald Trump, on Fox News this morning, and I don't care what anybody. I think this guy should still get was it a daytime Emmy or something like that? It's what happens in the daytime Emmys.
I don't know,
because he is crazy. He is crazy.
Every interview with him is like a reality TV show. It really is.
He is so crazy. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I guess I shouldn't laugh because, like, it's just his personality and his character. And this is the thing that I've always kind of thought was humorous about him, is just the way that he takes in things and his personal expressions of things, and how nobody is off limits. He will target whom he will and go after them. And I thought it was a very funny segment that was on Fox today, but he makes me laugh. So anyways, it was interesting to watch that. But in the same light, I did see an active real piece of news that what they were talking about. It was either on there or maybe ABC News, and they were talking about a man by the name of Robert Roberson. Let me make sure I got his name correctly, but Robert Roberson, I believe, is what his name is. And this guy, he has been on death row, I guess, for the past 23 years or so, and they were looking to execute him for the you're looking for the shaking death, where they shake a child, a shaking murder of his toddler, 2-year-old toddler, and they had been trying to figure out how they were going to put this away. All of the appeals to end this had been declined. There was no one that was coming to his rescue. And just in the nick of time, and I want to ask you a question if we know this. In the nick of time, they come up with a strategy, right? He's been in, and the entire time he's been in prison, he has been in 23 and a half hours. He's in solitary confinement. So for half an hour a day, he gets out to see the real world. I can't imagine what life like that would be like. But anyways, so he goes through this entire thing, 23 and a half hours in jail. He is now on his last hours of this whole death row thing where they're getting ready to execute him by lethal injection. And what happens is they come up with a strategy to stay him. I thought this was brilliant. The powers that be, because I guess there's people across the state that's saying, hey, we need to relook at this because there's new evidence that really kind of cast doubt on if he was responsible. And in the last moment, they get him approved as a witness in the trial against him. So they send a subpoena for him to be a witness in the trial that's against him. So that means that he can't die because he is now a witness.
He's a witness in an ongoing case.
That was brilliant. So the Innocence Project, for those of you who are listening that don't know, they deal with a lot of cases, and I think it's one of the southern states that they're kind of stationed out of, like Mississippi or Louisiana are the places where they're really going through some of those cases, and they're going back and using DNA and different things of that nature to acquit folks who have been sent to death row with the possibility of being executed. So in the 11th hour, he was saved from being put to death in the the big state of Texas, with this legal maneuver. There was also a maneuver to set aside after the initial one, to set aside his case, to give him some additional time. However, that was overturned, but he will have some time for them to continue the process of fighting for his innocence and getting his initial death sentence overturned. I thought that was really interesting. Because how do you feel about the death penalty?
I did support it at one point.
What was the reason you supported it?
Because there are people who it's like
they should die.
You should not be a part of society anymore. Any society, even a prison, like you should not be part of this anymore. But the fact that I've been rethinking my position on this for a while.
I love evolution.
It's been
good.
A couple of years that I've been like, maybe I don't think this. But I don't know about the idea of prison as punishment. I think there is a place for it, but I don't think how it's being used in the US right now is good for those who have been convicted of crimes, or for the nation. Like it's inefficient. Like to put someone on death row and put them to death takes more resources than just holding them in prison. And there are a lot of issues with the way convicts are treated in prison, and that's a whole can of worms there. But
like when you talk about the way they're treated in prison, what do you mean?
Solitary. You mentioned solitary confinement there. Personally, I believe that's kind of cruel and unusual punishment.
Oh my gosh, it's hell.
That's humans are social creatures, and that's terrible to do to somebody. As well as some of the horror stories about abuse of power and things in prison. It definitely needs to be looked at, and some changes need to be made there.
It's interesting that you talk about that. Because there was a study that came out and said that a baby doesn't develop fully and could possibly die if not held in the initial months of him being birthed, he or she being birthed. And so when you talk about that, you're right. We are social creatures. We are created to interact with one another. And so when I think about the death penalty, my thoughts about the death penalty, I just, I have never understood how people could be okay with taking someone's life. And I understand, and I've heard people, and I don't know if you've ever heard people say, well, I hope they get the death penalty. Like if it's a loved one and you kill their person, like, well, I hope they kill him. I hope he gets what he deserves. He gets the death penalty. I really don't and I guess maybe you have to be in that situation to understand that kind of pain. And I guess, to each their own. But I struggle with I struggle with being responsible and having someone's blood on my hands.
When I think about that aspect of things, the position of faith comes into it, at least when it comes to my worldview. And the concept of God has given the sword of the law over to the governments of mankind. That kind of removes the terribleness of taking a life from in my worldview.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, it's not because what people don't realize, and I'm glad you brought that into that context. That's just me personally.
Yeah.
But many people think, well, the Bible says thou shalt not kill. The actual interpretation of this is thou shalt not commit murder. And it's not murder if this is the punishment that has been put down for a crime, is the understanding. I think that's a great political, or not even political, a great question. I would love to hear an ecumenical group get together to have the discussion on the death penalty. And I know that there's been tons of people talking about it,
and the prison system in general. I think there's a big conversation from the faith community about what do we think about this?
When I was in college, my junior and senior year, I worked as an intern for the state of Michigan, and I was assigned to the Department of Correction. And so I stayed there for about additional 5 years after graduation. So I have my personal thoughts and opinions about MDOC, but when you put it in the light of faith, I think this should be a whole show in and of itself. Jonathan, you take me to the most amazing places. Thank you. But when you talk about, when you think about the prison system in light of your faith, what is it that comes to mind?
Well, there is always forgiveness. There is always salvation in the eyes of God. Even the most hardened criminal who has done horrible, awful, horrific things can find forgiveness. However, there are consequences for actions. And the Bible doesn't say, if God forgives you, society will forgive you. The Bible doesn't say, if you're forgiven for your sins, that removes any sort of worldly consequences for your actions. So I definitely think there's a need for that kind of justice, because justice is an important concept.
What do you think about people get in a heated conversation and someone dies, at which we've seen this happen a million times? I didn't mean to kill them. When we got into it, they hit me, I pushed them, they fell back, stumbled, hit their head on the corner, they died. Now I am being tried for murder and they want to give me the death penalty. What about something like that?
Well, that's why the justice system has different degrees for things. And even within like first degree murder, you have to meet certain criteria. Second degree, I won't say it's more lenient, but there are different check boxes need to be met. And even within those, if you're found guilty of something, even within that, there's
guidelines,
variable sentencing.
Yeah.
So murder isn't murder, like two people can be arraigned on open murder charges. One of them may have intentionally executed someone. Another person may have bumped into somebody intentionally, shoved them or whatever, and they fell down the stairs.
Yeah.
Both, there's a little bit of flexibility built into the justice system for that kind of thing. And
so
that's why it's there.
And so we trust the laws of the land. However, we understand that because we're humans, that we're flawed. So and that's the reason behind my struggle with killing people, because as humans, we are intrinsically vulnerable to making mistakes, to messing up, to not getting things right. And in most situations, I'm like, do we really have enough to take a life of someone? And that is the thing that I struggle with. I do recognize, as you say, which is a valid point, that being subject to the laws of the land as a believer means that, what government does is what government does and how they operate. But I just struggle as an individual being responsible for taking the breath, the life of someone who is because they've done something wrong. I struggle because there was this thing called Code of Hammurabi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of me, and when we talk about faith, it comes into play. The ethic or the Code of Hammurabi conduct was like an eye for an eye, right? And so when we get to our political landscape or our governmental systems, our correctional systems, and someone says, well, you murdered someone, so your punishment is murder. Because you murdered someone, your punishment is your life. It goes back to what I would consider a more, what would you call it? A more basic, bare bones concept of like restitution or judgment.
The Code of Hammurabi was one of the first quote unquote justice systems to have ever existed.
Right.
So it is kind of basic, I think.
Yeah, very basic.
Is a good word for it. But another thought when it comes to the death penalty is, if someone kills someone in self-defense, is that a bad thing? You've taken a life, but it was in self-defense. That person meant to kill you.
Yeah, no, and so that's defense, right?
And then,
so it's
then you have to extrapolate that to society. Society needs to protect people from those people that don't value life. But there is a different level of responsibility, and it's tough to think about, and it's tough to kind of parse through, which is why I don't have a concrete viewpoint on the subject now. So
you were talking about how you were evolving in this place.
Yeah.
So what has been the key thing toward your evolution of I'm being, pro the death
kind of what triggered it
versus
what triggered it was a conversation we had on this show.
Okay.
Where we were talking about,
the conversations on this show actually change your mind or influence your thoughts.
Yeah.
How about that, America? Let's hold that one. Can I record? We're recording this, right? So I can always come back to this.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we were talking about it, and it's like I said something along the lines of, well, I don't want to, society shouldn't have to, the taxpayer shouldn't have to feed and house this person when they obviously don't value life and they've gone through the justice system,
right.
They've been found guilty, whatever. And then Mark said something about, well, it's more expensive. It's more taxing on society to administer the death penalty to them. And that made me think, and that made me research, and I went, it is. So what is the justification for it then? And that's kind of triggered the thought process, and every so often when it comes up, I'll think a little bit more about it and try and solidify my opinion on it.
I'm curious as to how many people that are hearing this conversation, either when they listen to it on the radio or those who may be listening via social media, would have the guts, the chutzpah, if that's a word, to be able to.
I don't think the way you pronounced it is, but
I need some napkins to clean out my microphone after that. But the gall to be able to, could you participate in a death penalty scenario? Because I know they try to trick you so that you don't have to deal with the burden and who gives the lethal injection. Lethal injection is just lethal injection, right?
Yeah.
But like the other one, I'm still thinking like old school, the movies where everyone pulls a lever, but nobody knows which lever has the power to pull it. Could you actually, do you think that you have enough to stomach being a part of an execution that is a death penalty? I'm always wondering, like, what is the DNA of a person who could do that?
Yeah. As hard as it is to say, I think I probably could.
Really?
I think I would struggle with it afterward, but I think in the moment, I think I could. I think I'm capable of it. Do I want to? Heck no. No.
I could never do it.
No?
I don't think I could ever bring myself to do it. I am like you're talking to someone here. Like when I'm walking, if I look down and I see I'm stepping on ants, I'm like, oh, let me watch the ants. And so just in terms of a spirit of compassion, I think I would be a complete wreck. However, I always joke on here, like I give people 357 reasons to go in a different direction. That's Smith and Wesson reasons. And so I do believe in being able to protect myself and that kind of thing. But I don't think I could. When I drive down the street and accidentally hit a squirrel, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I killed a squirrel. It's Alvin's cousin, the Chipmunks, which was my favorite cartoon growing up. That's just like a shameless plug there. But as a kid, and so I can't do it. So I cannot imagine me being responsible for someone dying. It is just such a crazy thing. But so I don't know. I guess some people have the stomach to do it, but I certainly don't have the ability to do that. So that was Robert Roberson. So keep your eyes and your ears peeled, because that conversation is going to be very interesting. As one of the prosecutors is now a man of the cloth, a priest, a Catholic priest or something,
really,
or some kind of man of faith. Maybe he's a pastor, and he's saying that he knows for certain that Mr. Roberson is actually innocent, based upon information that came after. How many times do you think that we get that wrong? That scares me.
Yeah. And that's part of the conversation about the death penalties. How many times do we get it wrong? I think we get it wrong more than we'd like to admit.
Oof.
I think that jury trials you might as well flip a coin. I think a jury trial is probably, from a moral standpoint, the best way to go about it, but people are stupid. Like, people are really dumb and very easy to convince. So they're unreliable, I think. That's my opinion on it.
Would I be willing to execute someone based upon a jury trial? As fallible as we are as people, as often as we see things that we don't see, I had a situation, and this is exactly why you can never have me be the person. I had a situation where I went to an event, and I swear I saw this person at the event. And so when I got back home and I was talking with somebody else, and they were like, oh yeah, you did the event, who was all there? And I'm naming people. And they were like, no, they weren't there. I'm like, no, I talked to them. I know that they were there. I'm like, no, they weren't there. I'm like, they're lying if they're saying that they weren't there. And then when you go through the thing, and then they showed me that no, they were not there. They were actually here at the theater taking a picture at this time. And I would have sworn my life that person was at the event that I went to. And I just think about how many times, like, I literally saw someone that I thought was that person, but that is the fallibility that we have as humans. And could I put that kind of trust in someone else to make that determination? No, because I know how many times I screw up, and I would not want to be the one who is responsible for the fact that someone went to death. And as we were just saying, we think that we probably get it more wrong than we're actually willing to say that we have. And how many people, men and women, have gone to death row and have been executed, and information has come out after their execution that we actually got that one wrong. Do you think that the powers that be are willing to live up and fess up to those things? Absolutely not. So it is a debate that we've had for a very long time. I remember as a little kid having that same conversation. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the power of uncomfortable situations. Stick, stay, don't go away. Stay tuned for more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. Hello, everyone that is out there tuned in to WSGW and WJOL. We certainly are excited to have you with us on today. I got my man, as I said, in the studio, John B. We're sitting here and we're getting ready to just have a little really good, interesting conversation about some things that are going on when we talk about the power of uncomfortable situations. John, have you ever been in a situation where you're just really uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, about 5 minutes ago when we were talking about the death penalty.
What was so uncomfortable about it?
You just asked me, would you be willing to pull the lever on an electric chair?
And you said yes.
And I said yes.
Now you're feeling guilty.
It's an uncomfortable thing to think about, but I'm not going to be untruthful about it.
Okay. Well, today we're going to continue our conversation. And folks, you're absolutely right. You cannot undo a prison sentence, not to death. Once they're dead, they're dead. So we're going to continue that conversation. We're going to continue talking about uncomfortable situations. And I want to just share something with you. There was this one time when I was at the barber shop, and at this barber shop, I'm sitting there. Now I have been going to the same barber since I was a little kid. I was probably about 5 years old when I got my first haircut. I think that's about when most black kids get their first, maybe when they're about 1 year old. When they're 1 year old, they get their first haircut. You don't cut a black kid's hair until he's 1 year old. Did you know that, Jonathan?
I didn't know that.
I bet the world didn't understand that. You do not cut a young black kid's hair, young boy's hair, until he's about 1 year old. And one of the reasons I found this out with my cousin, and this is very extravagant information, but I'm going to share it with you because I think it's important, was because the texture pattern or the pattern of the hair is not set until that point. And so at that 1 year mark, they're going to be who they are. If they got a fro, they got a fro. If they got waves, if whatever it is what you're dealing with. But anyways, I've been going to the same barber for this entire time. And once coming back home from school, I witnessed something that was really interesting when we talk about uncomfortable conversations. Well, the story goes like this. I'm sitting there and in comes this white man, and this white is an older white man. And so, we here in the hood with all of these black folks, and which is normally because the realest conversations go down in the barbershop. We're having conversations talking about everything that takes place in the hood. And this white guy comes in, and everyone just kind of freezes for a second because this place is in the heart of the community. If you know where I used to get my haircut, it used to be at House of Styles in the city of Saginaw on James. Mo Woods, James Woods, the whole crew. Faye's out there. All of you guys that are out there, House of Styles, whoop, whoop, no longer exists. It's burned down. But we would go there, and the barbershop was the place in the black community where conversations, the real stuff goes down. So as we're sitting there, everyone freezes for a second because this white man comes in and he walks through the door, and we was all kind of like, bro, got this one messed up. Like, I don't think that he's in the right place.
Wrong address.
Wrong address, my brother. But we were all sitting there and everybody's just playing it cool. And so as we listening to the conversation, what we found out was that his regular barber that he normally went to was unavailable or was sick or something of that nature and could not get his haircut. And so, as every great person does, what do they get on and they try to Google what's next? He Googles barbershops, and he ends up in this particular barbershop, which was an all-black barbershop. And I think that it's a funny story. But what was so cool was what happened next. By the time he left, he had three new fishing buddies. A good old recipe for sweet potato pie. Y'all know that I love me some sweet potato pie. My favorite pie, even though I hate sweet potatoes. Is that crazy?
You turned me on to sweet potato pie.
Say that again, my brother.
I love sweet potato pie now.
Y'all hear that? Jonathan, he knows. On here at United Shades of Gray, I brought in one of those good old grandmama sweet potato pies. And my brother said, because his conversation was like, I don't think it's any different than pumpkin pie. What's your assessment now?
I don't like pumpkin pie. I do like sweet potato pie.
There you go.
And I keep getting told they're basically the same thing.
No, they are not the same thing. So all of my brothers and sisters out there of a lighter persuasion understand they are not the same. So please don't give me no pumpkin pie. So anyways, what was interesting is this guy leaves and he now has new fishing buddies. He's got a recipe for sweet potato pie. and probably the best lineup the dude ever had in his life. But it started me to think, and when I look back at that moment, it had me thinking about how rare these organic encounters are between, black people and white people. We are so polarized, especially in today's society, that we don't move across those lines. How often do you see those kinds of organic engagements taking place?
Not often at all. No. And it even comes down to, and we've talked about this before, it comes down to faith institutions, own barbershops, own churches, own hangout spots. People kind of keep to their own.
It's funny because we often say that the most segregated place on a Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Is the church. We don't cross lines. And when I look at it, I sit there and I'm like, how can we all read from the same Bible, have the same Lord and Savior based upon that Bible, believe in the same tenets of faith? We worship, sing many of the songs that are exactly the same. However, when it comes to how we worship in terms of the places, what the faces and the look like in the spaces, they are so divinely different, in every place. You go to a Mexican, this is what the 17th church in the city of Saginaw, we call it the Mexican church. It's called the 17th Street Church, but we call it the Mexican church. And why? Because when you go to service there, it's all Mexicans. But then you got all of the other churches, the AMEs, the Baptists, the Church of God in Christ, the non-denominational, that are all, black churches in this community. And then you have those same denominations in another community, and they'll all be white. Why is it that we are so divided as a people that we don't have these organic situations, that we don't find ourselves going into I've never let a white barber cut my hair before, because I'm like, they can't cut my hair. They don't know how to do it. So is it just the fact that of an understanding, or is it just the fact that we want to stick to what makes us feel most comfortable?
That's what the word uncomfortable came to mind. That's what it is. It's an uncomfortable thing to put yourself out there, especially on a touchy subject like race.
Well, as I look at this and I'm looking at our social media streams, I see folks out there like, then there's me. There are always, I'm going to tell you, this is what's so funny. And you'll know this is true. You can go to any black church on Sunday, and every black church is going to have at least one white person that is down for the cause. Like, they are there. They are singing all of the songs. They know how to clap, because white people clap like this on the 1 and the 3, and black people clap on the 2 and the 4. Did you know that?
I knew that.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad you're understanding this. So, they know to clap on the 2 and 4.
The 2 and the 4 is correct. Yep.
They know that. You say it's correct?
It's correct.
Why you say that?
1 and 3 sounds terrible. You do the 2 and the 4.
So anyways, but they understand. I'm going to tell you, you can go to any black church in America, and most of those black churches has one white person that knows, they come in, they understand the lingo. And I'm sitting there like, they've been around us for a while, because when you get the 2 and the 4, when you come in, they understand that raisins don't go into potato salad. They get the whole understanding. I'm just being honest with y'all. There are some things that are so different, in terms of how we worship, that when my white friends, so this coming Sunday is one of those Sundays, right? So we have our few congregational folks that are white, and they down for the cause of Jesus Christ and all that other stuff. But this coming Sunday, we're doing an experience. It's Clergy Appreciation Month, right, for the month of October. So we're doing a clergy appreciation. So I asked some of my white brothers who work with me in ministry and campus and other places, hey, y'all come on in. And so they're going to be in service. And it's so funny because not only is this guy white, but he is white, like white, not even from Midland, but the outskirts of Midland, in between Battle Creek, Michigan and Midland, Michigan. So he's coming, and he goes to a church, which I absolutely love, E-Free Church in Midland. Have you ever heard about that church? An amazing ministry. They're doing amazing work. But it's a white church, and so we get on there, and he's going to come in, and he's like, Kareem, every time I come to your church, I know all the songs, but I can't get the beat right. So he'll be with us on Sunday. Mike, you know who you are. Mike Peterson. I said his whole name. But he'll come in, and at the white church, they sing, I am a friend of God. I am a guitar in the background.
Yeah, you've got the
Ding,
guitar, the
I,
air guitar going on here.
and the drum. You come to the black church, they got the organ. I'm a friend of God. There is a difference. But I think that in that difference, the beauty is that we're singing the same songs. And I saw something over the course of the summer that brought together by the Memorial Cup, where we had all of these different people from different facets coming together under worship together in one Lord, one faith. And it was absolutely amazing. How many opportunities do you have to have experiences where you worship across racial lines?
You have opportunities all the time.
I'm talking about you.
Me?
Yeah. Because I got folks out here saying, Pastor, we're going to break him in. Bring him on to church. We're going to break him in real good.
I could go to whatever church I wanted to on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
I go to my church because it is what I know. It's what I believe. And I'm one of those people who, I'm an LCMS Lutheran. I believe we've got it right.
Wait a minute. What did you say? You're at what?
LCMS Lutheran.
LCMS Lutheran. What does that stand for?
Lutheran Church Missouri Synod.
Okay.
I'm a Missouri Synod Lutheran. I think we've got it right. I think that the beliefs taught by that church line up with the Bible properly. I have no hard feelings towards anyone else. But it's one of those, when I go to church on a Sunday morning, I want to get the real thing, and I want to get I want to be fed.
No, and that's good. And I think that that's the most important thing. I think sometimes we're feeding a whole bunch of ice cream sundae shakes and cookies, and we need to get back to teaching the real word of God. Okay, I'm going to transition from this. I'm going to ask you another question. But I made me think about some of the great friends I had growing up. Brad McCloskey, Chris Elliott, Garth Bruno. When I was a kid growing up, my grandparents were pastors. So we went to my grandparents' church, and so we had to go to church. Like, I don't care. Sundays was the day that we watched film because we play basketball. That was film day for basketball and football. And my grandpa was like, I don't care what they're doing. You're going to be at church. So we were always at church on Sunday. So my role, the coach would say, Coach Ron Von Dett, who just was recognized in an amazing way with the gym being named after him. He would always say, well, you need to come in after church. Whenever you get out of church, I want to see you in practice. Okay. Now, if y'all been to a black church before and church starts at 11 o'clock and practice starts at 11 o'clock, there is no way in the world that you're ever going to make practice. And which was the great thing, because Sundays, not only did you watch film, but all of the mistakes from the film, you would have to run for all of the mistakes, right? So my friends would start coming to church with me. Like, we went to church with Bowen on Sunday, and we would get there at the very end of practice and would not have to run. And it was so funny because my little Catholic friends and Lutheran friends who were so used to quiet church, when they came in, they was like, man, your church is good. It didn't seem that long. What time did you get out? 2 o'clock. So we would go from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it was just the funniest thing. But it was those experiences and those immersion opportunities, like the man in the barbershop, that really kind of gave me a real understanding of what real cultural diversity could be about. What are other things that we could do as we talk about the uncomfortable situations? What are other things that we could utilize to bring people together? And I think it's important to have these conversations, considering everything in politics is driving wedges and driving people apart.
I think the easiest way to start that branching out is those spaces that are already shared. I know it's not hard segregation like it was in the mid 1900s.
Whites only. You can't eat over here, boy.
It's not like that. But
right.
But when you go to, I don't know, a city council meeting, when you go to a school
Okay.
event,
Okay.
where not everybody is going to be the same race, choose a different seat. That's a good way to start. You're rooting for the same team. If you go to the school basketball game, you choose a different seat. You sit next to somebody that you wouldn't normally sit next to, that may not look like you, but you know you're rooting for the same team. You have something there, and it takes a little bit less effort to kind of start a conversation that way.
You know, that is really good. And one of the reasons why that can now work, it couldn't have worked before, but it can now work, is because when you went to the sporting events, to the basketball games, especially the basketball games, football games, what would be funny is that the black people are like, no, ref, you're crazy. They would be going crazy. And the white people are like, oh my gosh, they're loud. Bob, why doesn't he just sit down and be quiet? That's my white person's voice. Did you get it?
I caught it. Yeah.
Okay. So like, why don't you just sit down? But now when you go to the game, man, I've gone and my white brothers and sisters are now in it. I saw my white sisters going in like, ref, what is wrong with you? Are you blind? And I'm like, they got it. That power of expression, it used to be loud, being bombastic, but it's really just about expressing how you feel. And I think that and I'm laughing and I'm making a joke about it. And even such things as like, what are you going to say?
But that's a sign of the sense of propriety and, oh, I'm in public, I have to put on a certain image.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. Stop it.
And it doesn't, right?
No,
Let's enjoy ourselves. And that's the thing that I think that when we can be our realest selves, and I make jokes about white people, just like I was sounding like the white person. And if you're looking for political correctness, this is probably not the show that you want to watch, because we do these things, and I do it because I want to make light of ourselves. My family and friends think they are always saying the opinions that are expressed are those of Kareem Bowen, not of this family. But I say that because sometimes we've got to learn just to laugh about ourselves. And I'm the type of person that whenever I think of a person with a nationality, I make a voice. I automatically go in. It's almost like I'm this deep-hearted comedian at heart, and I make the voice of the people that I'm talking about.
Kareem, that's racist. You can't do that.
Is it? I want to make.
I say that sarcastically.
I would like to make sure that folks understand exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it. Do you understand what I'm saying, mate?
Is that British?
Yeah, that's my Brit voice. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you noticed that black and white people in Britain sound like indistinguishable?
Not only that, yes, it's crazy.
Isn't that weird?
And so that lets you know that, languages learn, right?
Yeah.
So it's dialectal. So some of the things that we are really about where we come from and the influences that we have, right? And so I think that it's beautiful because it shows us that when we are put in same places, in the same set of circumstances, that we get away from the division of race. We get away from the black and the white and the Hispanic and we become more human the more time we spend around each other. And it's the human nature that is the thing that draws who are connected to, and the things that we like and the things that we don't like. That's why I think that when we have great things such as music is something that continually keeps us coming together. It is, a language that supersedes race and ethnicity. Food, I'm going to tell you right now, you put some good food. Hungarian, Budapest, wherever it comes, people are going to eat. And when they eat, we talk and we enjoy. And so when we talk about having uncomfortable conversations, let's think about adding what is comfortable to an uncomfortable conversation to add a starting point for us to begin to have those conversations.
And it's important to note that is the starting point. That's not the whole conversation. Sitting down for a meal and enjoying. Ooh, I'm enjoying some different food.
John, I sat next to a white person and ate tacos.
Wow.
That's white people and Mexicans all at the same time.
You are so cultured.
So what you're saying is that is only the beginning point of that conversation. So that means that we've got to push. So what do we do?
It's a comfortable element to an uncomfortable situation. Yeah.
Remember we had the dinner that we did. There was the one dinner that we had where we had the conversation with the recorded. But there was another dinner that we had. This is so funny. And I hope I'm able to tell this story. I got a couple minutes to share it. I'm going to share this. So Mark Bassett, those of you who know Mark, if you've watched this show, if you listened to it before, Mark is my co-host. He is on hiatus somewhere bodyboarding in California, but we'll leave that alone. But he had a cultural diversity dinner, picnic, whatever you want to call it. Now, my man him and his wife, they made baked beans and they had the ground beef. And Mark, I was like, Mark, you understood. You were culturally appropriate for the moment. The chicken was cooked all the way through the they had hot bratwurst instead of hot dogs. Black folks like burnt hot dogs. My white counterparts like brats, but it's all good, right? And so we were in there, and he had some friends that were from, where were they from? South America, Brazil, South America. Then a white family who I still stay in contact with right now, Scott. It was one of those people. Scott got it. He understood we were from the same generation. Music was the thing that made us connected, right? So at this meal, we go through the meal. Everything's great. And so Mark's guest, and I cannot remember their name. Edgar, I think is the man's name. I can't remember the wife's name. They brought flan. Now, I have my African-American mother who makes the killer sweet potato pies, but has never had flan in her life. So I thought to myself, ooh, flan. Right?
It's definitely a texture thing with flan.
It's a texture thing. So I'm thinking like, oh, I'm good. My mother's like, ooh, I really want to taste flan. She's down there talking to this lady from South America. Oh, it's so delicious. It's kind of sweet. It's very good. And and see, they hear it again. And so my mom's like, oh, I would like to have some. So I know what flan is, right? So they bring out the flan, and it looks good. They put it on the table, and they began to slice it up. And when I tell you, it was a big one. So when I tell you that Mark was like cutting big chunks of this thing, trying to make sure everybody had some, it was funny. So I sat there and I just watched. I saw another African-American couple that was at the table with their kids, and I was watching my mother. And I'm sitting there, and I saw that first bite going. She cut into it with a fork. She put it in her mouth, and her eyes are like, and I was dying on the inside because she had that look like, what is this in my mouth? It was, flan is that, how would you just slippery jello? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe
slippery jello, but the flavor is good. Mm-hmm. So she like, oh, and so she's sitting right next to the lady who made it, right? So she's like, oh, I get like the flan. And I was like, it's different. It's good though. Very good taste. And I'm sitting there like, what are you gonna do with that hunk of flan on your plate, right? And so she sits there. She starts moving around the plate. I know what that means. She's moving it around to make it shrink a little bit. And then as soon as the lady turned her head, she put her napkin over it and she headed for the trash can. Now, that was a cultural thing. But once she came back to the table, I didn't let her get away with it. So I was like, hey, Mom, how you like that flan? And she's like, and she's looking at me like, I'm like, let me tell you, this is very different. She's a big on texture, and that texture probably threw her. So she was able to tell it and say, oh my gosh, I don't know. The flavor was good, but be honest about it. Mm-hmm. And then that allowed us to enter into a deeper conversation. But it was such a funny thing when we find ourselves in these tough, uncomfortable spots.
And it's okay to admit that embarrassment.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the thing, is she felt embarrassed about not liking what someone else had made.
Yes.
But if you tell the truth about it, it opens a door.
How many times we have these uncomfortable conversations on air, and then we get off and we continue the conversation to either come to a place of understanding or to share, I never thought about this. This made me uncomfortable. And we process how it made us feel. That is such an important part of having courageous conversations. Today, we were talking about how uncomfortability can really produce great conversations when we allow it to. I appreciate those of you who are out there listening that really enjoy my British voice. I lost it. Now I do not know how to get back to the British voice, but I'll figure it out one way or another. I absolutely love this. I make fun of myself and other races because we just got to laugh at ourselves. We're going to take a break and see you guys next week. Take care of yourselves and each other. Grace and peace.